Welcome along to another installment in our Wisdom of the Philosopher series.
It's good to be back.
Today, we're jumping into a really foundational text, Plato's Theaetetus. It's basically this fascinating conversation, mainly between Socrates and a young mathematician, Theaetetus.
That's right.
And they're wrestling with what sounds like a simple question, but, well, it really isn't. What is knowledge?
It's fundamental, isn't it? And the dialogue itself is our main source here.
Our mission, then, is to sort of unpack the big ideas from this ancient text and see, why people are still talking about it.
Absolutely. It really sets the stage for so much later philosophy. And if you enjoy these kinds of explorations, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Maybe click the notification bell so you don't miss future discussions.
Good point. Okay, so let's start with Socrates. He's a familiar figure, but how does he present himself specifically in this dialogue?
Well, he's definitely the experienced questioner we know, still on his divine mission as he sees it. But here, he gives himself a particular title. He calls himself a man midwife.
A man midwife. Okay, that's vivid.
Yeah.
What's the idea behind that metaphor?
It's really key to how he approaches the conversation. He's saying his job isn't to tell Theaetetus what knowledge is, but to help Theaetetus deliver his own understanding.
So drawing it out of him rather than pouring it in.
Precisely. He sees potential ideas inside people, maybe unformed, and his questioning, his method, is meant to bring them to light. He mentions having this ability to understand people, using sympathy almost, to unlock their thinking.
That sounds very Socratic, like in other dialogues, the Memorabilia, for instance, where he's always asking, what is justice? What is temperance?
Exactly the same method, probing, questioning, helping the other person clarify their own thoughts.
And the setting itself has a bit of drama, doesn't it? I mean, Socrates is apparently on his way to face the charges brought by Miletus.
Yes, there's that background tension. It echoes the end of the Euthyphro, where he's also heading towards his indictment. It adds this layer of seriousness, maybe urgency, to the philosophical search.
Make the pursuit of truth feel even more vital.
It does. And it's interesting, too, that Theaetetus shows up again later in The Sophist, playing a slightly different part. It suggests Plato is weaving these characters and ideas across multiple works.
Okay, so the core discussion kicks off when Theaetetus offers his first definition. What is it?
He suggests pretty straightforwardly initially that knowledge is sensible perception.
What you see, hear, touch. That's what you know. Seems intuitive enough.
It does. And Socrates, or rather Plato through Socrates, immediately links this idea to the famous sophist Protagoras.
Protagoras. Man is the measure of all things.
Exactly. The idea being that reality is essentially whatever it appears to be to the individual perceiver. My perception is the measure for me, yours is the measure for you.
Which then gets tied into Heraclitus, right? The philosopher of flux.
Yes, the connection is made because if perception is the key, and perception is always of things that are changing, as Heraclitus argued everything is, then knowledge itself becomes relative and constantly shifting.
So if the wind feels cold to me and warm to you, according to this view, it is both cold for me and warm for you.
That's the implication of combining knowledge's perception with the Protagorean measure idea. It leads to a kind of radical relativity of sensation.
Okay, but Socrates doesn't just leave it there. This is where the Socratic method really kicks in, isn't it? He starts to pick this definition apart.
He does, yeah. One of the first big challenges raised is that Protagoras' thesis seems to undermine itself.
How so?
Well, if man is the measure, meaning every person's belief is true for them, then what about the people who believe Protagoras is wrong?
Right. If their beliefs that he's wrong is true for them, then Protagoras' own statement that all beliefs are true becomes false in their case.
Exactly. It's a kind of logical judo. The opponent's views, by Protagoras' own standard, become just as valid, including their view that he is mistaken. It's often seen as a self-refutation argument.
Clever. So what's the countermove? Did they try to salvage the perception idea?
Well, there's an attempt to refine it, suggesting maybe perception is true only at that specific instant it occurs.
Okay, but wait. If Heraclitus is also right, and everything is in constant flux, changing from moment to moment,
then how can you even fix a perception at a single instant? If the object and the perceiver are both constantly changing, can you really say this is how it appears, even for a split second?
It seems contradictory. You can't have stable knowledge based on perception if both perception and reality are like rushing rivers.
That's the tension they expose. The Heraclitean flux seems to make the Protagorean perception-based knowledge impossible to pin down.
And then Socrates uses that rather pointed analogy, the one about animals.
Uh-huh. He asks, somewhat humorously, if all sensation is knowledge and equally true for the perceiver, why should we listen to Protagoras? Why isn't a pig, or he mentions a dog-faced baboon, just as good a measure of all things, since they also have perceptions?
It sounds almost insulting, but it makes a serious point about expertise and judgment, doesn't it? If all perceptions are equal knowledge, teaching seems pointless.
Right. It challenges the very idea that some views might be better, wiser, or more knowledgeable than others, which undermines Protagoras' own position as a teacher people paid to learn from.
So that first definition of knowledge is sensible perception seems to run into some serious roadblocks.
It does. It gets thoroughly dismantled through these arguments.
Which naturally leads them to try something else. What's the next candidate for defining knowledge?
They move on to consider opinion or belief. Maybe knowledge is just a true opinion.
Okay, so simply believing something that happens to be correct. If I believe it will rain tomorrow, and it does rain, do I know it will rain?
Well, that's the question they tackle. And they use a really good example. The Athenian dicasts, the jurors.
Right, the courtroom setting.
Imagine jurors listening to arguments, weighing evidence for a crime they didn't actually witness. They might reach the correct verdict. Their opinion about who committed the crime might be true.
But we wouldn't say they know what happened in the same way an eyewitness knows, would we?
Exactly. The eyewitness has a different kind of access to the event. The jurors have, at best, a well-justified true belief based on persuasion, but it seems different from first-hand knowledge.
So even true opinion isn't quite hitting the mark. It feels like it's missing something.
Yes. That example powerfully suggests that just having a true belief, even if you arrived at it through reasonable means like weighing evidence, isn't sufficient for what we typically mean by knowledge.
Which pushes them towards a third definition.
It does. The final major attempt in the dialogue is to define knowledge as true opinion, with definition or explanation, sometimes translated as account or logos.
Okay, so now we're adding a justification component. You need to have a true belief, and you need to be able to explain or justify why it's true.
That feels much closer, doesn't it? Like, if you can give a rational account for your true belief, maybe that's knowledge.
It definitely seems more robust than just true opinion alone. Does this one finally stick?
Well, frustratingly, perhaps, no. This definition also runs into difficulties within the dialogue. Socrates explores different ways to understand what this explanation or account might mean, and finds problems with each interpretation.
So even adding justification doesn't quite solve the puzzle within the context of this specific conversation.
Not conclusively, no. The dialogue, like several other early Platonic dialogues, think of laches on courage or lysis on friendship ends without arriving at a final, agreed-upon definition. It's what we call an aporetic dialogue, one that ends in puzzlement or impasse.
That's really interesting. Why would Plato write a whole dialogue searching for a definition only to end without one? It raises questions about his purpose, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And this leads to a couple of key challenges when we study the Theaetetus. First, how accurately is Plato portraying Protagoras' actual philosophy? Is it a fair representation or a Socratic critique?
That's a historical question, I suppose.
It is. And second, how much is Socrates just a character expressing Plato's own developing views versus exploring different possibilities?
Because Plato's works are dialogues. They're dramatic. They present arguments through characters.
Precisely. Socrates isn't always necessarily Plato's voice laying down the final word. Sometimes the other speakers, even the sophists he argues against, raise points that seem quite valid or force Socrates himself to refine his position.
So the lack of a final answer about knowledge might actually be the point.
Many scholars think so. It reflects Plato's method. He might be more interested in the process of critically examining concepts, comparing different perspectives, and showing the difficulties involved, rather than just handing down a doctrine.
It's about the journey of inquiry itself, maybe. Clearing away the inadequate definitions to make space for a better understanding, even if that understanding isn't fully articulated here.
That seems very likely. The aim could be to analyze, to compare, to advance the understanding by revealing the complexities, rather than achieving a simple final definition which might not even be possible for a concept like knowledge.
Okay, so if we step back and think about this whole exploration, what are the crucial takeaways, even without that final definition?
Well, we've definitely seen powerful arguments against defining knowledge simply as perception, mainly due to issues of relativity and flux.
Right, the man is the measure and Heraclitus problems.
We've also seen why just having a true opinion isn't enough. The juror example makes that very clear. There needs to be something more.
And even adding that something more? The explanation or justification proved tricky to define adequately within the dialogue itself.
Exactly. So the dialogue really maps out the territory and highlights the pitfalls of these common sense or initially plausible definitions.
But there's real value in just doing that, isn't there? In that process of questioning and eliminating the less adequate answers.
Immense value. It sharpens our own thinking about what we mean when we claim to know something. The questions raised are absolutely central to epistemology, the theory of knowledge, and they're still debated today.
And the dialogue itself, beyond the main arguments, has these moments of real poetic insight, doesn't it? You mentioned fine expressions.
Oh, absolutely. There are some beautiful phrases, like comparing learning, especially from someone like Socrates, to the noiseless flow of a river of oil, suggesting it can be gradual, smooth, almost imperceptible.
That's lovely.
Or the description of thinking as the mind essentially talking to itself, asking questions and answering them silently.
It captures that internal process of reasoning.
It really does.
Yeah.
And these add richness to the logical arguments.
It also helps to remember the context, right? Plato's writing in this period of incredible intellectual energy in Athens.
Definitely. You have all these different schools of thought clashing: the sophists, the remnants of earlier philosophers like Heraclitus and Parmenides, the beginnings of systematic science and mathematics. The Theaetetus reflects this dynamic, sometimes confusing intellectual world where people are forging new ways to think about reality and our knowledge of it.
Well, this has been a fascinating journey back into Plato's Theaetetus. Thank you for guiding us through it as part of this Wisdom of the Philosopher series.
My pleasure. We've covered the main attempts to pin down knowledge perception, true opinion with an account, and why each faced significant challenges.
And we're left, perhaps intentionally, with these enduring questions still resonating.
We really hope this encourages you, the listener, to continue mulling over these ideas. What does it truly mean for you to know something? Think about how your own senses, opinions, and the explanations you give fit into your understanding.
Absolutely. And if you found this discussion spark some thoughts, please do hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more explorations in the history of philosophy.
Clicking the notification bell keeps you updated, and we genuinely love seeing your own insights and questions down in the comments section. What are your thoughts on the nature of knowledge after hearing about this classic debate?
We'd be very interested to hear. Thanks for joining us.